The Young and the Restless spoilers Tuesday full episodes July 22, 2025. The tension in Genoa City was no longer a silent undercurrent, it had become a tangible force, vibrating beneath every conversation, haunting every step. Jack Abbott stood in the grand living room of the Abbott estate, his hand frozen mid-air, coffee cup suspended, as the words from Billy's mouth settled like glass shards in his chest. It was unthinkable. Billy had made a decision. One that not only shocked Jack but threatened to tear the fragile unity of the family apart. Details were scarce, but the implications were catastrophic. Billy had aligned himself with forces Jack had spent years trying to keep at bay. The look in Billy's eyes wasn't reckless this time, it was resolved, methodical. That's what made it worse. This wasn't the rash Billy who chased chaos for sport. This was a man who had made peace with consequences and chosen his path anyway. Meanwhile, up on the remote mountain estate, the battle for truth and control took a darker turn. Nick Newman, now in possession of the USB that exposed the secret alliance between Kane and Phyllis, had retreated to the main railcar of the private train, determined to descend the mountain and deliver the evidence directly to law enforcement. Sharon had followed close behind, torn between her instinct to protect Nick and her growing fear that they were all players in a larger, more dangerous game. As Nick paced the narrow length of the train car, Phyllis approached with the kind of false calm that always preceded a storm. "I think you owe me an apology," she said. Nick turned slowly, eyes narrowed, voice flat with disbelief. "You're asking for an apology?" "Kane didn't kill Damien," she insisted. Nick's jaw clenched. "I have the footage. I have the proof." He deleted the security video, Nick. "Doesn't that benefit the real killer?" Phyllis countered, her tone too practiced. Nick stepped forward, intensity radiating from every word. "You think erasing the only evidence left behind is something innocent people do? You were there. You stole the USB. You lied to my face. And now you're covering for him, why?" Phyllis's voice shook as she tried to deflect, her tone somewhere between desperation and defiance. "Because you're not seeing the bigger picture. If someone is framing Kane, framing both of you, it means we're dealing with something else entirely. Something worse." Sharon stepped forward, unable to hold back. "You keep defending Kane. Why? Why are you fighting so hard for him? What are you hiding, Phyllis?" Phyllis met her gaze coldly. "I want this investigated by professionals. Not by emotional vendettas. Not by Nick storming into town accusing people. We need experts." Nick took a step back, exhaling sharply. "No. We need the truth. And I'm done waiting." He turned and stormed back toward his suite, frustration etched into every movement. Phyllis watched him go, panic rising in her throat. Sharon lingered only a second longer, shooting a withering glance at Phyllis before following Nick. Whatever had once bonded them was now shattered. Back in the quiet of his room, Nick began packing, his laptop, the USB, notes, printed screenshots of the paused footage. His mind was already in motion, calculating how long it would take to descend the mountain, which route to take, who to contact first. Then came the knock. Sharon's voice. "Nick. It's me." He opened the door, his expression a mix of relief and determination. "If you're here to stop me, not a chance," she cut in. "I'm going with you." Nick let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. For a fleeting second, he felt less alone in the storm. But that moment was obliterated when another knock rang out, louder, firmer. Not a request. A demand. The door creaked open before Nick could speak. Carter entered, flanked by a tall man with the demeanor of private security. Carter's face was unreadable, but his intent was clear. "Nick Newman, you are hereby placed under house arrest, along with Sharon Newman," Carter announced. Nick stepped forward, incredulous. "On what grounds?" "For the safety of Mr. Kane Ashby, Carter replied smoothly. And for the mental health of our guests. Nick's eyes flared. Get out of my way. You and your goon. Carter didn't move. My advice? Go peacefully. Let's avoid escalating this. Sharon's eyes darted between them, heart pounding. You're doing this to protect Phyllis. And Kane. Aren't you? Carter didn't respond. That silence was the answer. Nick raised his voice, stepping nose to nose with Carter. You think locking me up will make this disappear? You think putting guards at my door is going to erase what's on that USB? You're wrong. This ends tonight. Carter's expression remained calm, but his posture stiffened. That USB is inadmissible. Stolen. Unverified. Nick scoffed. Let the cops decide that. He backed away slowly, never taking his eyes off the man. Sharon moved beside him, her hand finding his. Together they retreated, their hearts racing in sync, the fear giving way to clarity. They knew now. They were officially targets. Elsewhere in the estate, Phyllis was already spiraling. She had seen Carter go to the room and knew what it meant. Her plan to keep things contained had failed. The video was out. The walls were closing in. And her last defense was Kane, the man she'd staked everything on. She found him alone, staring out the frosted windows, jaw tight, drink untouched in his hand. They know, she whispered. Kane didn't flinch. I figured. We have to get ahead of this. We should have done that weeks ago, Phyllis. Before you kept the damn USB. She stepped forward, voice low, trembling. I need to know you're with me. That we're still united. Kane turned slowly, eyes hard. I don't know anymore. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft, silent, deceiving in its beauty. But inside the estate, the storm was only beginning. Would you like me to continue with what happens next? Such as Nick planning an escape, Jack confronting Billy, or Phyllis making a drastic move to frame someone else? The walls were closing in, but Sharon was no longer willing to stand silently by. Her loyalty to Nick ran deeper than fear, deeper even than the pressure Carter was exerting to keep them subdued. She had spent her life navigating lies, betrayals, and manipulated truths. But this was about justice. As Carter moved to tighten the grip of house arrest around them, Sharon stepped forward with a calm that masked the fire burning within. I'm going to call Victor, she announced, her voice slicing through the air like a knife. Carter froze, not because of the name, but because he hadn't realized Sharon was still in the room. His eyes flicked toward her, registering her intent a moment too late. I wasn't aware you were present, he said, his tone suddenly formal. Sharon didn't blink. I heard everything. Carter exhaled slowly, calculating. Then I'm afraid you'll need to come with us as well. Sharon's gaze didn't falter. She knew exactly what Carter was doing, trying to silence her before Victor could be alerted. But that was his mistake. Because unlike others, Sharon had nothing left to fear. Her purpose now was singular: protect Nick, expose the truth, and ensure no one, not Phyllis, not Kane, and certainly not Carter, escaped accountability. Back down in the estate's sprawling garden, the late afternoon sun filtered through the skeletal branches of dormant rose bushes. Jack Abbott stood stiffly near a stone bench, arms crossed, his breath visible in the chilly air. The calm of nature did little to soothe the storm inside him. He looked toward his brother, the man who had once been his biggest liability and now, somehow, had become his greatest question mark. Billy, Jack began, what do you make of all this? Nick's obsession with Kane, chasing him down the mountain, claiming he's got video proof. Do you think it's desperation? Or truth? Billy didn't turn to face him. Instead, he stared off into the distance, the weight of decisions unspoken pressing down on him. I'd rather talk about us, Jack. About what matters. Jack's brow furrowed. This does matter. Billy shook his head. Not as much as what you and I haven't talked about. Let's dig into that instead. Jack narrowed his eyes. You mean the part where you transferred Abbott communications to Sally Spectra behind my back? The part where you made a legacy decision for this family, without even a conversation? Billy finally turned, a faint smirk dancing on his lips. This isn't about Sally. Jack's voice hardened. This is about your mission to take back Chancellor, at any cost. You knew you were going to break something. You just didn't care what. Billy let out a dry laugh. Are you here to lecture me about legacy now? Because if I remember correctly, Abbott Communications wouldn't have survived its first fiscal quarter without me. You were too busy playing diplomat while I was down in the trenches. Jack's eyes flashed with fury. You want honesty, Billy? Abbott Communications wouldn't exist without me. You think I needed you to save it? You wouldn't have gotten past the damn lobby without my name backing yours. Billy stepped forward, his voice low, dangerous. Then maybe it's time I stopped walking in your shadow. I'll pull out of our partnership. Find a new investor. Maybe someone who actually wants to win. Jack's heart pounded. Don't you dare. Billy shrugged. Kane's available. He's ruthless. Efficient. He understands the game we're in. Maybe it's time someone like that took your place. There it was, the line crossed, the match thrown onto gasoline. Jack's world, once held together by strained family ties and reluctant collaboration, had just been split down the center. Billy was walking away, and worse, he was considering aligning himself with the very man whose name had become poison to the Newmans. You really think Kane is the answer? Jack said, almost in disbelief. After everything we've seen? Billy didn't respond. He simply turned and walked away, leaving Jack alone in the garden with the cold wind and the bitter truth that maybe he never really knew his brother at all. Back inside, Nick was pacing again, jaw tight, mind racing. He had never felt this trapped. The evidence in his hands, the truth echoing through every corner of his conscience, and yet Carter stood between him and justice like a well-paid gatekeeper of lies. Sharon's announcement had only raised the stakes. Mentioning Victor's name was like striking a bell in a cathedral of fear. Everyone in Genoa City knew that when Victor Newman was involved, things got serious. Carter had tried to mask his reaction, but it was there, in the tightening of his shoulders, the flicker of unease in his eyes. I told you I'm not waiting, Nick muttered to Sharon. And I told you, I'm coming with you, she replied, her voice soft but unwavering. That was when the knock came again. 3 deliberate raps that felt more like a warning than a greeting. The door opened slowly. Carter stepped in once more, this time without backup. He held a thin document, freshly printed. This is a revised order, he said. You are both under limited protective detainment for 72 hours. No visitors. No movement beyond your suite. Nick looked at him with the rage of a man who had been burned too many times. You think a piece of paper's going to hold me back? I think 72 hours buys your enemies time to erase everything, Sharon said grimly. Carter didn't flinch. Obstruction will only make this worse. Nick's lips curled. Then I hope you're ready to play hardball, Carter. Because you've just stepped into a war. As Carter exited, Nick turned to Sharon and whispered, we need to get the USB out, now. Someone we trust. Victor. Noah. Anybody. Sharon nodded. I'll make the call. Downstairs, Phyllis was watching the monitors, her face drained of all color. She knew the time for subtlety was over. If Nick made it off that mountain, if the footage got out, she would lose everything. She had one option left, and it terrified her. She needed to betray Kane before he betrayed her. She reached for her phone. Carter, she said when he answered, we need to neutralize the threat. Now. Shall we continue from here? Would you like to explore Phyllis's betrayal of Cain, or Jack confronting Sally and preparing to protect the Abbott legacy at all costs? The room was dim, lit only by the amber flicker of a bedside lamp and the moonlight bleeding through half-closed drapes. The air was thick with tension, but Kyle wasn't thinking clearly. He didn't want to think. Not about Damien's death, not about Cain, not about the poisonous politics unfolding between his family and the Newmans. For a fleeting moment, all that existed was Audra, her lips, her fingers, the warmth of her breath against his neck. Her soft sighs filled the silence as she pulled him back to the bed, her expression tinged with coy vulnerability that looked almost real, as if this was more than a ploy. Kyle hovered above her, his lips brushing her collarbone, the taste of perfume and deceit mingling on his tongue. She tilted her head back, exposing her throat with a soft gasp, a sound meant to disarm. But then he stopped. Like a switch flipping in his mind, Kyle froze. His hands trembled with the weight of regret before it had even settled in. He pushed away slowly, rising from the bed, his breath unsteady. Audra propped herself on her elbows, her smile faltering into confusion. "What is it?" she whispered. Kyle leaned close, his voice low but cutting like frost. "I know you, Audra." Her lashes fluttered in false innocence. "What does that mean?" "You didn't come here at dawn to cry on my shoulder. Don't pretend this was about grief." Her smile returned, softer this time, calculated. "Do you really believe I showed up just to seduce you?" she asked. "I was scared, Kyle. I was vulnerable. This just happened." He scoffed, the anger rising like fire. "Nothing you do just happens. You've weaponized every breath you've taken since you landed in Genoa City." Audra sat upright, the sheet falling from her shoulder, but she didn't cover herself. She never did when cornered. "I'm hurt that you think so little of me." Kyle's eyes narrowed. "You used Damien's death. You manipulated the chaos to crawl into this bed." She snapped, her voice rising. "How dare you accuse me of exploiting Damien's death? I loved him." He folded his arms, unmoved. "No. You wanted control. And when Damien was gone, you looked for the next man you could sink your claws into. Me." Audra's eyes flashed, furious now. "If I hadn't stepped back, you would have kissed me anyway. Don't act like you weren't part of this." "That's the point," he said, leaning closer, his voice now a growl. "I wanted to know how far you'd go. And now I do. You went all the way." Silence stretched between them, sharp and painful. Audra stood, wrapping a robe around herself, but her poise cracked. She turned to him, her voice quieter now, strained. "You've convinced yourself you don't want me. But that's not what your eyes say. That's not what your body said 5 minutes ago." Kyle shook his head. "You're wrong." "No," she insisted, stepping forward. "Everyone sees it. Claire sees it. That's why you're so desperate to hold on to her. Because you're afraid of what's real between us." "I had to pretend," he spat. "Pretend everything was fine. Pretend this tension wasn't real. But I'm done pretending now. Whatever this was, it ends tonight." Audra froze. "Leave," he said, voice cold and final. She didn't move. "I said get out." Still, she lingered for a breath, too, as if her presence could rewrite the moment, soften the rejection. But the resolve in Kyle's eyes told her otherwise. She gathered her things slowly, deliberately, the silence now louder than any argument. As she stepped out into the hallway, she looked back once. But the door was already closing behind her. Kyle sat on the edge of the bed, burying his face in his hands. The taste of betrayal still lingered on his lips, and somewhere deep down, shame twisted like a dagger. He hadn't fallen, but he'd come close. Too close. Audra had won battles before, seduced power with her charm, twisted hearts into weapons. But this time, her miscalculation had cost her. And now, the real fallout would begin. Let me know if you'd like to continue with Claire discovering the betrayal, or Victor confronting Kyle over his divided loyalties. We can also pivot back to Phyllis and Kane as they scramble under mounting pressure.